Okay, now let's move to the second talk of today's session. Let me introduce the title and the speaker. OSM mapping of building damage review and prospects after Chido in Mayotte. OSM mapping of building damage review and prospects after Chido in Mayotte by Severin Menard.
Welcome to this session about mapping building damage in Mayotte after Cyclone Chido. This is something I've been coordinating since January, and I will show you what has been done so far and the future actions. Mayotte is an archipelago that is located between Africa and Madagascar, right here. And on December 24th last year, a tropical cyclone called Chido hit Mayotte, and especially northern half, as we can see on this map. Usually, Mayotte is spared from cyclone because of the protection on the eastern side by Madagascar, but this time, this specific cyclone went from the north down to the south and hit both Mayotte and Mozambique. It just spares the Comoros Islands. The damages were huge, especially for the informal settlements that are very numerous in Mayotte, here on the seashore or over the hills. But even for formal settlements, the damages were really significant. Sometimes they can seem quite minimal, or they can even spare totally a building, but there are, you can see here, very significantly damaged building, and this one is totally, completely destroyed. Beyond the human infrastructure, the environment, the ecosystems have been also really affected. In the coming days, post-disaster imagery from Pleiades satellites were provided through the disaster charter and made available online by the French Geographic National Institute with different dates for this Pleiade imagery. We got the confirmation that was authorized to use it to edit OpenStreetMap. So it was possible to evaluate the damage based on them. Such evaluations were already made in the past since Typhoon Haiyan back in 2013, but not at a very large scale. There's a wiki page about it, and one example had been kept from the past. There were also another methodology called BAR, that stands for Baker, Ashka, and Raymond, that was designed in 2016. And basically, this methodology asks the contributor to use 4 visible damage classes that are non-minimal, significant, and complete, and also to identify whether the structure is light, medium, or hard. This methodology had been implemented directly in our OpenStreetMap by a contributor called GJC with a preset and a mapping style. And there was a test made in Haiti at the same year, but there was no OSM wiki page, so I created it. But after a review, I actually decided that it was easy to identify the 4 damages classes, so we would keep that. But I decided to ask the mappers rather to informed about the roof material than the structure hardness because it was really much easier to identify on vertical imagery. And so this is what is actually surveyed through this assessment. And I created an OSM wiki page about it, explaining the approach and the tagging. And a new preset and a new style was created, and there is even one for colorblind people. And the mapping using this renewed methodology was first conducted in a pilot area over Mamoudzou, that is the largest city in Mayotte. There was detailed instruction provided in 4 languages in the hot tasking manager, as well as workflow videos in English and French. Here is the example of such instructions. You can see that every step there is a video, or even every sub-step, and clear example are provided to identify both the roof material and the damage classes, as well as the end some quality control checks. But another building damage assessment had been already made at the time by the European Union Copernicus Emergency Management Service. Due to remote sensing limitation, basically the cloud coverage, this rapid mapping assessment was made only on the eastern side of Mayotte. MSIR data is available online as shapefile and in an open license. It represents around 1/4 of the total number of the buildings in Mayotte. If we zoom in, we can see it consists in vector points, and generally they are located in the center of the OSM buildings, and they have 3 different classes: possibly damaged, yellow, damaged, orange, and destroyed is red. Unfortunately, I would say there's no category for unaffected buildings, and so we don't know where there's no point above a building if it's undamaged or simply not evaluated. However, the other classes are comparable to the bar classes for the affected building, so we can compare them. Even I would say sometimes possibly damage with minimal damage is not totally overlapping. As the MRSR data overlaps the building, we can automatically add the attribute in extraction of the OSM buildings. I did that in the SDI, except obviously where there is no EMSR point intersecting a building. So this merge dataset has been created. It's minutely updated, and it allows the 2 assessments to be combined. And if I click on any building, you can see I have both the imagery assessment in OpenStreetMap, but also what start with COP. We have the classification, all the attributes put by the Copernicus EMSR methodology. And the styling can show the results of one assessment or the others, and it completes the missing information. Here, for example, this is the Copernican assessment, but where there is no information, remember there's no category for undamaged building. These tiles, it takes the information from OSM. So this combination, but I would say Copernicus MSR methodology first. And here, that's the contrary, OSM first, and wherever there is no information in OpenStreetMap yet, that's the Copernicus assessment that is used. This mix of methodology can be seen in the last attributes. You can see this one, OpenStreetMap COP synthesis with OSM first, and second one, it's Copernicus first, okay? And there is also an attribute regarding the gaps between the two methodologies. And there is a specific style to show how many class gaps we can have between the two methodologies, from 0, when it's the same class, up to 3. And it was really insightful during the mapping, and also it was a good way to interact with the people from Copernicus EMSR to compare the results of our assessments, something I will talk about later. Outside this test area, the idea was to complete the building damage assessment in OpenStreetMap outside the areas um, of the MSR activation. So our focus is this orange area. But we cannot map everywhere. These white areas, they represent where the cloud coverage is present in all the available Pleiades imagery, so we cannot, unfortunately, map there. The approach was to break it down in small tasking manager projects, once at a time. From my experience, this is to avoid discouraging contributors. And all the data, I mean the building assessment, the cloud coverage, etc., can be downloaded from this map context. Here, you can click on any layer and you can download it from the GeoCastra SDI, or from this metadata sheet, or this WMS link. This is to use it, for example, as WMS layers in QGIS. So this is an example of an area in the tasking manager and resulting mapping. We have 15 projects so far in Mayotte, and sometimes the area is not heavily affected, the majority of green, but sometimes the damages were really significant, like here in Vaibé. This is the last project that is ongoing. This map context ends with a view providing statistics at the commune level. There are 17 communes in Mayotte, and there is a specific layer of statistic for it, wholly updated. If I click on one of the communes, have basically building counts for many indicators. Have the total number of buildings in this commune, the total number of buildings that can be assessed because they are not covered by the clouds, the roof materials for every category, and of course the damage classification, the one that is specifically the one used for OSM, adapted from the bar methodology, EMSR classification, and then the combination of the two, the one combining OSM first, completed by EMSR, and the opposite, EMSR completed by OSM. And I have here the total number of the buildings have been assessed by the two methodology. I have also statistics regarding the imagery that have been used, and it ends with a percentage, and this percentage is the total number of assessed building divided by the total number of buildings that can be assessed. Okay, so it's 41% here and 82 here. Have here it's more than 100 because actually this area that had been assessed by EMSR, they use a different imagery, and their imagery has less clouds than ours over this commune. These figures are summarized in these pie charts. So you have the size of each pie is depends on the total number of communes. You have the repartition of the damage classes. The one that is shown is actually the one combining OSM first completed by EMSR, and on the middle, the percentage is the one of assessed buildings regarding the total number of buildings that can be assessed with Pleiades post-disaster imagery. This layer can also be downloaded right here. There are also dashboards that is updated minutely. It shows the global figures for the buildings for all Mayotte. So the total numbers, there's a tripod for all buildings in Mayotte, one with the assessed building, this one with this building, and also the one that's still to be assessed. And this is also a chart showing the gaps between OSM and Copernicus. These results can be compared to another assessment has been made at this time in the field by Fondation Architecte de l'Urgence, that is a French NGO, and also CAU, that is basically a public consulting service for architecture, urban planning, and environment in France. Unfortunately, there is no data set to be downloaded. There's only this map for whole Mayotte at the commune level. And it has been done in the field, as I said, but only on a small portion of the building, 5%, a bit more than 2,000 buildings. And they did kind of a interpolation based on the figure they had with the 5%. The results tend to be similar to the one we have in OpenStreetMap, even if for some communes they have a bit more differences. I would like to have access to this data to see actually better these differences. In parallel with the mapping, other activities have been carried out, and especially outreach. So of course, I contacted Copernicus CMSR as soon as I had some results and to share, and showing the gaps we had. So I had a meeting with them. They were obviously interested with the result we have. They told me they would download the data and make some comparison and get back to us if they would like to for some insight. I learned there that actually the EMSR activities are made in a very short time. and by service providers. They have a pool of, I think, 7 service providers, mapping providers, that are basically located globally, so they can be activated anytime. And as soon as the imagery is available and accessible online, this service provider have 10 hours to provide the damage assessment. So it's really quick. That also may explain the differences we have sometimes in the assessment. Also contacted people in Mayotte, especially architects from CIU, and have some really interesting insights regarding the damages in the field compared to the one we can see from the imagery. And for example, it's clearly destroyed, and if some buildings seem to be undamaged, it may not be the case. There is a pattern in construction in Mayotte that we can see clearly here, for example, or there, is basically building one floor to another. So what looks like concrete roof are basically just basement for a next floor. Floor I built along the years. And unfortunately, if this concrete floor and these concrete roofs have resisted to the wind, they had some cracks, and it's really expected that in the future they have, I mean, this building have structural issues. So unfortunately, even the one that look like undamaged have been damaged by Chido. So that's really a feature we have to keep in mind regarding the tagging. What are the next steps now? First, I think there will be a tagging review. There were some comments in the forums regarding the tagging approach I had, and I will answer that. And I will explain that we need to keep in mind that the damage it was mostly remained to for the buildings that were not totally destroyed, but only damaged, and that will remain in the map. And I'm really in favor to keep a track of these damages, because there are some structural wounds, some scars that will remain for these buildings, and for Chido, and maybe unfortunately for future cyclone to come. A mapping review regarding the contribution in this specific mapping. This was really new for almost everyone. The participation was mostly from dedicated power mappers, I mean proficient mappers with a good experience in mapping, and they were strongly involved. So not a huge number, but people that really mapped a lot. This is something that I know from this experience is a lack of learning curve for I mean the medium mappers. I have many mappers that just open a task in the tasking manager. They do not read at all the instructions at all, and they just, I mean, modify the buildings uh, as they used to do in the, I mean, the huge majority of the tasking manager projects. So that's really something that we need to think about. If to replicate that, that is really an objective. Um, Teaching people will be key. Um, I would like also to make some results reviews compared to the field's assessment. If I can access to the data that has been made in Mayotte would be, I think, really insightful. So this is something I hope to do in the coming weeks. And regarding the replication at OSM community level, and the idea is, for me was to have this kind of a pilot in Mayotte, providing the data for Mayotte, but also establishing a methodology that can be replicated. Of course, it means to have access to post-disaster imagery. If we don't have such imagery, we can map damages. So having access on a easier way to the disaster chatter imagery, I think would be really key. And last thing I have in mind is maybe we can think about designing a methodology for an OSL field mapping for damage assessments and setting or creating tools to do it. I will really be happy to discuss about all of that in the questions and answer. If you want to access this document, all the links I have provided, you can use this QR code. And if you want to reach me out, this is my email address. Thank you very much.